September 2025. A hunter named Mark Ellison stepped off the main trail in Red Hollow, Tennessee, and noticed something wrong with the ground. The stones were too flat, too deliberate, too carefully arranged for a forest floor. When he crouched down and moved one aside, he saw the edge of a boot sole. Cracked. Half buried. Still attached to a sliver of decayed fabric. And just inches away, something small. Gray-white. He thought it was a deer bone. Until he saw the shape. This discovery would finally answer a question that had haunted 4 families for 22 years. But what investigators found next didn't just solve the case. It exposed someone who had known the truth the entire time and chosen to walk away. This is what really happened to the Red Hollow 4. It was the last weekend of July, 2003. 4 cousins. One final trip before life pulled them in different directions. Josh was 19, the oldest, the driver. He just bought a used SUV and was headed to college in Knoxville that fall. His younger brother Ryan was 17. Quiet. Bookish. The kind of person who read more than he talked. Their cousins Amy and Caleb, 15 and 18, rounded out the group. They'd grown up a few miles apart. Spent summers fishing in the same creeks, playing in their grandfather's old barn. This trip was their send-off. 2 nights near the ridge. The same spot their grandfather used to hunt. At 5:46 p.m. that Friday, a gas station clerk on Route 19 remembered them stopping by. They bought firewood, water, and a disposable camera. Security footage confirmed it. They looked relaxed. Laughing. Teasing each other about who forgot the matches. There was nothing out of place about it. Nothing that would suggest it would be the last time anyone would see them alive. By Saturday evening, rain rolled unexpectedly over the hills. The forecast had called for clear skies. But locals remembered the temperature dropping suddenly, fog settling thick along the low roads. When the cousins didn't return Sunday evening, both families began to worry. By dawn Monday, the worry had turned to fear. Phone calls went unanswered. The only message anyone received came from Ryan's phone, a half-second of static before the line went dead. By midday, both families drove to the trailhead off County Road 214, where Josh's SUV sat parked just beyond the gravel turnoff. Keys still in the ignition. Doors locked. Deputies arrived within the hour. What they found inside stopped them. No signs of struggle. Gear neatly packed in the back. But no fingerprints on the door handles. No smudges on the interior glass. Someone had wiped the car clean, deliberately, carefully, leaving only a faint streaky shine. That detail changed everything. Half a mile from the car, searchers found the campsite. Half finished. Like they'd just arrived, or were interrupted mid-setup. A tent unrolled but never staked. Cans of food still sealed. A fire ring with damp wood that had never burned. And on a nearby rock, an old flip phone. Screen still glowing weakly. Emitting a low, steady hiss of static through the speaker. It was an unsettling sight. Like someone had staged the scene, but never inhabited it. At the edge of the ridge, investigators found one more thing. A folded piece of notebook paper, soaked through, pressed into the mud. Only 2 words still legible. South Path. 2 words. No fingerprints. A direction that would take 22 years to follow. More than 30 volunteers joined the search by that evening. Helicopters circled overhead. Search dogs were brought in. But the dogs couldn't pick up a scent beyond 200 yards. In any direction. The trail simply stopped, as if the group had stepped out of the world entirely. Amy's father walked the creek bed until dark, calling her name until his voice gave out. By day 4, the mood had changed. The adrenaline had become something quieter. More desperate. Searchers described the hollow as a place where sound didn't carry. Where the forest felt like it was listening back. Something inside that old county vehicle, something had been searched, had been cleaned, had been staged. They covered more than 10 square miles. Drones. Cadaver dogs. State rescue teams. Ground-penetrating radar over a rumored sinkhole near the ridge. Nothing. Not a shred of clothing. Not a scrap of food wrapper. Not even a dropped flashlight. On day 10, the official search was scaled back. Only a handful of officers remained on rotation. The families never stopped. The police did. And by the time the first anniversary came and went, there was nothing left but questions, and a feeling that something in those woods knew exactly what had happened, and wasn't ready to let it be found. 2 parents went to their graves without answers. Amy's mother in 2016. Josh and Ryan's father in 2018. Both died not knowing. The rest of the families learned to carry the question the way you carry a stone in your pocket, always there, always heavier than it looks. By 2025, Red Hollow had become the kind of story told quietly at campfires. Part folklore, part warning. The road into the hollow was cracked and half swallowed by overgrowth. The trail sign barely legible. Parents still told their kids not to wander past the second ridge. Then, a true crime podcast called Vanished in Plain Air released a 3-part series on the case. Within weeks, the episodes went viral. YouTube deep dives followed. Online sleuths began connecting dots that had never been public. Reddit threads lit up. A man claiming to be an amateur radio operator posted logs showing interference patterns near Red Hollow during the exact weekend the cousins vanished, a strange pulse sequence, like a distress transmission with no origin signal. That wave of attention reached the right ears. In early 2024, a detective named Laura Hensley quietly reopened the file. She was young, too young to remember the original disappearance. But she'd grown up hearing it as a warning. Warnings, she believed, usually meant someone had something to hide. She reached out to the surviving family members that spring, asking for updated DNA samples. It wasn't a promise. Just a chance. After 22 years, even the smallest action felt like progress. It was bow season when Mark Ellison stepped off the trail. He'd hunted these woods for most of his life and knew their temperament. But as he moved deeper into the trees, something caught his eye, a patch of ground that didn't look right. The rocks were too flat. Too deliberate. He crouched down. Brushed aside a few stones with his gloved hand. He'd found bones before. Deer carcasses, animal remains. Part of hunting. But not like this. He pulled out his phone and stared at it for a moment before dialing. Within an hour, deputies arrived. By late afternoon, the ridge was crawling with forensic investigators. Photographs taken from every angle. Markers placed beside each object. Beneath the stones lay a shallow depression. Roughly 5 feet long. 2 feet wide. Inside, fragments. Bone. Weathered cloth. And beside the remains, a rusted metal flask. Initials faintly etched on the side. J.R. Joshua Raburn. The atmosphere among the team shifted instantly. Within 72 hours, dental records confirmed the worst. The remains belonged to Josh Raburn and his cousin Caleb Thomas, 2 of the 4 who had vanished in 2003. For the families, it was both a relief and heartbreak. After 2 decades of uncertainty, at least part of the mystery had finally surfaced. Detective Hensley arrived on site personally. She walked the perimeter slowly. The location was nearly 2 miles from where the original search teams had focused, outside the grid, hidden by dense undergrowth and steep slopes. Easy to miss. Even with aerial scans. She stood at the edge of the site that evening, looking into the trees, asking the question that would define the next phase of the investigation. Had the cousins come here on their own? Or had someone brought them? Carbon monoxide is colorless. Odorless. You don't smell it. You don't see it. You just slow down. And then you don't wake up. In that sealed underground chamber, for young people may have had minutes. Forensics reconstructed what had happened beneath Red Hollow Ridge. Beneath the burial site lay the remains of a buried county maintenance truck, a 1978 Chevrolet utility vehicle, reported missing in 1989 after a storm damaged the ridge. No one had ever found it. Inside the truck's crushed cab, 3 cell phones melted together into a single black mass. Serial numbers recovered from beneath the residue matched 3 phones registered to the missing cousins: Amy's flip phone, Ryan's Nokia, Caleb's prepaid model. All 3 had been listed as untraceable since the weekend they vanished. Beside them, a handheld radio, nearly destroyed, bearing the seal of Monroe County Maintenance. The coroner's findings told the rest. All 4 cousins showed high carbon monoxide levels in their bone marrow, levels consistent with exposure before death. A corroded pipe, part of the old storm drain's ventilation system, had collapsed over decades of pressure. That pipe had once connected directly to the buried truck's exhaust system. Forensic engineers theorized what happened. The cousins, caught in the unexpected storm, had discovered a narrow underground opening, part of a long-decommissioned drainage chamber. They'd gone inside for shelter. They lit their camp stove for warmth. And the confined space did what confined spaces do. It ran out of air. But if this was an accident, a tragic chain of events, then why did someone come back? ===08. Roy Dalton, the human villain, 2200 hours, 26:00 ===. The evidence of reburial was impossible to ignore. Soil layer compression tests showed the site had been manually disturbed, not once, but twice. The first time, naturally, by erosion. The second time, by human hands. Roughly 2 to 3 years after the cousins disappeared. Someone had found them. And decided to bury them again. County records from 2005 showed a seasonal erosion contractor had been hired for work near the ridge. One name appeared repeatedly in the incomplete logs. Roy Dalton. A drifter. Quiet. Kept to himself. Hired for flood repairs, then gone by the end of that summer, unpaid rent left behind, a truck sold for cash, no forwarding address. A shop owner in town remembered him vaguely. Said he came in once with deep scratches along his arms and dirt caked under his fingernails. Said something about a bad cave. Left without explaining. Forensic soil dating confirmed it. The topmost layer of disturbed earth above the burial measured roughly 20 years old, a reburial period consistent with 2005. The fabric found wedged under the truck's driver's seat, a torn section of uniform sleeve, bore the Monroe County seal. DNA confirmed it belonged to an adult male. But no match was found in county employment records. The department had no record of anyone assigned to that sector at that time. Years later, Roy Dalton was himself reported missing. No remains were ever found. Was he guilty? Or just a frightened man who made the worst decision of his life? We may never know. Because Roy Dalton was never found either. That spring, the surviving families gathered at the ridge. 4 wooden crosses, standing in a line overlooking the forest. Each bearing a name carved by hand. No speeches. No cameras. Just wind moving through the leaves, and the sound of people who had waited 22 years for a place to finally stand. Detective Hensley stood with them, watching the light fall through the canopy. Nearby, the excavation site had been filled and sealed. A faint patch of disturbed earth, already beginning to disappear under new grass. The Red Hollow case was officially closed. The science made sense. The records were complete. But even she couldn't shake what remained. Those boot prints, preserved in oxygen-poor clay, leading away from the collapse, belonged to someone who had stood exactly where the truth was buried and chosen to leave it there. Forensics could tell her the size, the tread pattern, the approximate brand. But not why. She quoted something Sheriff Donnelly had said years earlier at one of the anniversary vigils. A reporter had asked him if he believed the case would ever be solved. He paused for a long time. "We'll find the truth," he said. But not the whole of it. More than 2 decades later, those words had never felt truer. The case is closed. The files are sealed. But whatever Red Hollow gave back, it kept something too. And somewhere beneath that ridge, under new grass and old clay, something remains that no camera, no radar, no court document will ever fully reach. The question that started in the summer of 2003 has an answer now. Just not a complete one. And maybe that's the most honest thing Red Hollow ever offered. If this case taught us anything, it's that some truths survive decades of silence. These stories take weeks of research, late nights, and real records to piece together, because these lives deserve to be remembered properly, not forgotten. If you want us to keep uncovering cases like this, subscribe, and leave a comment below. We want to know, do you think Roy Dalton stumbled onto the site by accident? Or do you think he knew more than anyone realized? Tell us what you think. And we'll see you in the next one.